Innovation in RC has a history, and Aaron Harris has been at the center of it. In 1998, he founded Hardcore Racing Components, a company that changed the game with upgrades like the world's first titanium performance chassis. From off-road to on-road, Hardcore's billet machine parts set the standard from 1998 through 2005, dominating the RC hop-up market. Fast forward to 2023, and Harris is back with Vast RCX, a division of his engineering firm Vast Dynamic Innovation. The mission? Redefine performance and reliability with premium, US-made components built under Aaron's direct supervision. Every part is engineered without compromise, using cutting-edge materials and processes designed for serious hobbyists, builders, and competitive drivers who demand more than just parts. They demand precision. Vast RCX isn't just about upgrades, though. It's also about supporting the RC journey and building a global community of creators, competitors, and other innovators. From crawling rocks and tearing trails to off-road racing and on-road racing, Vast RCX delivers parts that perform, inspire, and last. This is the next chapter in a legacy of innovation. This is Vast RCX.
Welcome back to the Shop Mini RC, everybody. I'm Ken, and today we are looking at some Vast RCX. These guys are making some really cool stuff, and I think a lot more cool stuff is going to be coming. We'll talk a little bit about what they're doing, what they're making, but we got a big old bag of goodies here we're going to check out for the Micro B and the Micro T, and it's going to be awesome. They've also got some chassis plates on the way. Basically, you're going to be able to build pretty much a ground-up Vast RCX Micro B and Micro T, and they're also +5 chassis, so they're a little bit longer. So if you really want to get into modifying and having something unique and really race ready, these chassis and these parts, they're going to be the answer, I think. There's tons of cool stuff that they're doing, starting with the Micro Bs and Micro Ts, moving on to all the way to crawlers and whatnot. So there's like SCX24, TRX4M type platforms that they're going to be working on and building, and it's going to be pretty awesome. They're super innovative, and we'll show more of that stuff later on. But for this video, we're going to stick with just this little Micro B here, and looks like a Micro T, but really it's a Micro B with a aftermarket body on it. But we're going to upgrade this guy. This guy's totally stock other than the body, and we're going to throw some of the Vast RCX stuff on there. We're going to go through and show you all the different parts they offer for the Micro B and Micro T, and then like I said, we're going to throw it on there, we're going to run it, we're going to see how it looks, how it feels, how it drives, all that good stuff, and give you our opinion on it. I mean, just from looking at the parts already, they seem pretty good. So we're excited to check out this new company. Not really new, like I said in the intro, he's been around for quite a while, but making a comeback, and it's going to be pretty awesome to see what they bring to the RC community. And I think they're focusing more on smaller scale stuff, which is right in our market. We love that. So that's awesome to see more small scale support, whether it's off-road racing, on-road racing with like the 128s and Mini Zs. I think they have some stuff for the RC28 coming out from Team Associated. So that'll be awesome to see. When they do, we'll definitely get that on the channel. And then, like I said, some micro crawler stuff. So that's to be pretty awesome as well. Let's go ahead and dive into this though. Let's talk about what they offer for the Micro B, Micro T, and then we'll get it installed and we'll check it out. Look at all this awesome stuff, guys. Now, before we dive into this, I do want to recommend you go check out vastrcx.com, their website, and see all of the different parts they make. We don't even have everything here. There's stuff on the site still that they make. They make a bunch of different wheels. They're, like I said, they're going to be bringing chassis, which we will be getting as well. So we're going to try to do a full Vast build at some point, but looks like they also have a transmission case coming and some other stuff. I would just, like I said, highly recommend going checking out the site and just see what they have to offer. And you can also see all the pricing and stuff. You can kind of see it here as well, but yeah, definitely check out the site. Even if it's while we're watching this video, pop it up and look at it and listen to what I'm saying. Either way, definitely some cool stuff on the site, and you can even see some of the other platforms that they're planning on supporting. Of course, you've got the Micro B and Micro T, the Mini B, Mini T, RC10B7, the RC28, RC10, Mohami Grom, NASCAR, the Venture 18, Techno, SCX24, Ascend 18, a whole bunch of stuff. And then they have some specific platforms, the VS410 and the VTRX4M and the VTR X4M HT. And we talked to them a little bit about some of that stuff. They're not quite ready yet, but hopefully they will be at some point soon, and we'll be able to show you those as well. But they look super cool. There are some pictures on the website you can check out. But yeah, overall, tons of great information on the website. I highly recommend you checking it out. Let's go ahead and start diving into some of this stuff that we have here. One thing that is cool is they have two different front end blocks. They have, with your A-arms and your blocks, they have a race version and a standard offset version, 0 offset. Very cool there. You can see it's slightly different. We'll get more into that later as well. Full rear bumpers as part of that rear caster block, which is cool. Another thing that's really cool about the Vast RCX stuff is you've got obviously all the hardware, but some of it comes pre-assembled. The knuckles, let me see if I can find a knuckle here. They've already got bearings pushed in there. They've already got their ball joints on there. Super cool. Already kind of assembled to help save you some time. Just a bunch of awesome stuff. And again, this is a very unique uniquely manufactured process. It's kind of a 3D printed thing, but it's not your typical 3D printing, guys. This is not, again, I'm not a big fan of 3D printed parts, but this stuff is totally different. And when I open them up and we start to use them, you'll kind of see, it might be hard to tell through camera, but these things are stiff, rigid, super strong, and there's enough flex when you need it for where you need it. But it's actually a powder matrix thermoplastic nylon, so it's a nylon material, and it's super high wear resistant. So when it rubs together on, like, the A-arms, we should go ahead and open one of these up. So like I was saying, on some of these parts where you have a lot of rubbing happening, like the A-arms and caster block or bulkhead up here, super wear resistant when it's rubbing against each other. Also, there's a high lubricity, which means that the material itself kind of lubricates. So when it's rubbing against the other, another similar material, it's very smooth. So this is very cool. And you can see, I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell, but I can kind of flex it just a little bit. Now, I'm sure if I pushed it hard enough, it would break, but this stuff is super, super strong. But you can see it kind of flexing there. Okay, pretty awesome material. Again, this is not just your normal 3D printed material. Look at that. It is really well done, really strong. Again, it's basically the closest thing you can get to injection molded nylon, but without being injection molded, which is awesome. It's also got kind of what they're calling a no slop tolerance fit. So there's zero slop in this. I don't know if you can see, but there's like, again, the most slop is maybe where the pin is going through. So, but as far as like forward and backward slop, none. And it's not like it's not loose. It's plenty loose, right? Like it basically free falls. And worst case, which I really appreciate as well, and I talked to Aaron about this, the owner, having things be a little bit tighter, and I mean like microns tighter. Again, this is not tight. I would run this as is. But if you really kind of want to be specific and kind of anal about what you're doing as you're building, you can always loosen things up even more. But again, this is already super loose, and I love the tolerance that we have here. But it's tight. It's basically no slop, which means if you want to, you can always go in and you can just take the file down just a tiny bit, or sandpaper just the tiniest bit, and get that fitment exactly as you want, versus being loose and then having to shim it. You'd rather not have to shim things. Shimming always ends up creating more binding and whatnot. So if you can avoid shimming, you should. But this stuff is going to be fantastic. And like I said, the more this gets ran, the more lubricated the plastics are going to be against each other with minimal wear. I mean, you'd have to really, really wear it in, but just getting a little bit of initial break in, and this thing will start to be just super buttery smooth with basically no play in there, no slop, anything like that. Pretty awesome. All right, so I do want to go ahead and dive into this stuff and start to get it installed. Oh, we also have these. I didn't show these, but some different chassis plates, chassis covers. Very cool. We do have some Micro T stuff, which we're probably not going to get to in this video, but I did want to put it out. We've got rear shock tower here, the top deck and servo mount, front body mount for a Micro T. There's a front bumper for a Micro T, and then a rear wing, the Falcon wing. It's pretty cool for a Micro T. So some minimal Micro T stuff. But again, a lot of this stuff like this will work on the Micro T. So a lot of it is Micro B and T. All right, but we're going to be doing a Micro B today. So we're going to go ahead and swap over all the Vast RCX parts onto this guy. And again, we'll weigh before. Let's do a before weight and then an after weight. And then that we can see, did we increase weight? Did we decrease weight? How's our weight distribution looking? Did it change much? This material is supposedly lighter and stronger. So that'll be cool to see as well. And they're well priced. If you look at the prices on the website, again, coming with all the hardware, everything you need, the whole front end here, front shock tower, body mount, all the balls, everything in there already basically assembled. Screws, some extra screws and ball joints for the other parts that aren't assembled yet, but like $14 for that whole piece. Pretty good. And again, it's all made in the USA, guys, which is awesome. All right, let me go ahead and get some stuff laid out, and then we'll get it installed. All right, so here's some of the parts laid out. Most of them. There's still some stuff that they're making that are not yet released, and I think some newer stuff that just came out that we did not receive, but we'll go through what we can here. Let's start up here with our A-arms. There are two different style A-arms, which is pretty awesome. We have a race version, which is this guy here. It's a little bit more bulked up, beefed up. It's basically still the same stock geometry, but you can see that it's got this chamfer edge here, as well as kind of this plate, and it dips lower, kind of a lower center of gravity down in here to kind of lighten things up, I think. And then we have this gull wing version or offset version, which you can see actually comes up and over, and that's 1.5 millimeters there. So it's actually going to drop the front of your chassis down by 1.5 millimeters and get you a little bit more stability. So that should help quite a bit. Whereas the race version is a little bit more beefy and going to be a little bit more aggressive on your cornering and whatnot. So some cool stuff there. I absolutely love that we have some different options. So that's super cool. We also have these caster blocks here. And these guys, I believe, are the quote unquote light caster blocks. And then they have another more rugged, thicker caster block. So depending on how you're racing or where you're racing, if you're doing like indoor carpet, you probably want to run these guys. If you're running some really rough terrain, maybe you have sticky barriers. If you end up hitting a barrier, you might want a little bit more durability. Then you probably want to go with the rugged caster blocks. But they're both, right now, they're $6.99. And I love this hardware that it comes with. I just want to show you these ball joints. They have both the hex on the base here, and then they're also hex heads in here, so you can screw and unscrew with the driver. So that's good. Recently, our experience, we had the Team Associated RC28, and none of the ball joints were hexed on the inside, so you always had to tighten it with the little the base here, and I'm not a fan of that. So I love that all the hardware they're using you're able to use a hex driver to tighten that and loosen that. Super nice, and I definitely appreciate that. All right, we also have this front end here with different shock towers. This is the full system. I think you can get each part individually. If you wanted to just get this portion, you can get that. If you want just the shock towers, you can get those. But it comes with two different shock towers. The system does, as well as all the hardware. And you have your standard kind of shock tower where your shocks are going to be mounted on the front. So if we go ahead and pull this off here, you can see we've got these front mounted, that's a stock position with our aftermarket body mount for that body, but you can see the shocks are mounted towards the front. That would be this standard style shock mount. And then you've got this guy, which is an offset shock mount, which is super cool. And it's going to push the shocks to the back of the shock mount. So it actually ends up being in front. You can see it's kind of extended here, and your shocks are going to mount behind. So some cool options there. If you're looking to kind of change up your shock geometry and whatnot, you definitely have options. So I definitely dig that. Kind of curious why they didn't just make it the full thickness there, but I guess they deemed this was plenty. Either way, we're probably gonna have to use our standard mount here just because we're running this aftermarket body mount, which hopefully will still mount up. Looks like it does have the same kind of holes here, so we should be able to mount that body mount and no problem. There's also this top deck, and it comes with two different servo mounts, which is super nice. We also have an extra one here, the AGF RC servo mount. So with the larger servos, this top deck comes with both different servo mounts. So depending on which servo you want to run, whether it's a stock or an aftermarket servo, it's nice that that comes with, or you can just pick up the mount by itself, which is super convenient. And then our side little panels here, side braces, front bumper, and our wing. And then we also have this guy here, which is a GMR3C receiver case for the small fly sky receivers. If you want to run one of those, this is a nice little case for you. They also have a top mount, top deck that's got the case kind of built in, much like this stock top deck has that case built in. So that's super cool as well. You'll be able to just mount it in there with their top, kind of built into your top deck, and save yourself screws and weight. It kind of lightens it up a little bit. So that'll be nice. I am kind of curious how this top deck is going to be designed to hold the stock receiver. We might just have to double-sided tape it on and decase it. So it might end up decased because, yeah, this is built into the top deck there. And you can see this top deck is going to lower it quite a bit. So we just got to make sure our battery's still going to fit. I think there's some foam underneath the battery, actually, or something. So we'll see when we get in there and get all this stuff cleaned out, how much room that takes up, and if the stock battery still fits in there. It should, I would hope. And then we'll just probably mount our receiver on top, decased. Either way, we should be golden here to go ahead and do this build real quick. If I run into anything crazy, I don't plan on doing a full, like, showing every part of the build. At some point, we will probably do a ground up Vast RCX build using their chassis and all their parts, everything they offer to build it up from the ground up. And that'll be a very detailed, long video. But this one, we're just gonna go ahead and use movie magic to come back to this thing built. Oh, we need to weigh it out. So we'll weigh it out, and then I'm going to go ahead and throw all these upgrades on, and then we'll weigh it out again, and we will hit the track. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's go ahead and weigh this guy out. We're all zeroed out. We're all ready to run. Battery, transponder, everything as if we were going to race this guy. We're at 152 grams with a 58 rear, 42 front, and then 50-50 side to side. So not too crazy, not too bad. And this is kind of a heavier body because it's not the Buggy body. It's a bigger truggy body. We have body mounts on here and whatnot. So it's going to be a little bit different than if you were to do a totally stock Buggy, but I think you'll get the point here. And then we're going to swap all this stuff over, throw it on there, see how our weight changes, if it changes at all, and see where. And yeah, we should, hopefully we'll get a little a little better weight distribution. I'm not the most experienced in off-road buggy truggy racing. I kind of assume you want kind of a 55-45 is my guess, kind of 55 rear, 45 front. I'm not totally sure. If you know, put it down in the comments below. What is the ideal weight distribution for off-road racing, essentially? I know in crawling it's 60-40. You want 60% or 65% even in the front and 40 or 35 in the rear, as low as possible. Obviously here we're going to want to be as low as possible as well. But we also want to be super light. Light and nimble is always good, but what's that ideal weight distribution? Let me know down in the comments below, guys. All right, let's go ahead and get this all built over. Take note of these, and then we'll come back and we'll weigh it again. So I did want to show that this, I didn't even realize that the battery sits on this whole thick battery tray. So it makes sense that you're able to actually lower this tray by a significant amount, your upper deck here. Look at that. That guy's going to sit so much lower now. And even the battery is going to sit much lower. Look at that. Comparatively speaking, where'd it go? Where's my original tray? Here it is. Compared to this guy. So again, the battery was sitting right up to the top of our deck here. It's right flush with the top. So it's not like there was extra space there. So the battery's sitting pretty high. And now removing that inner battery tray, which you really don't need, you've got this here, bam, lowers it so much more. And then it's cool because you've got these little thumb screws that are gonna go in, and you can use them to lift this open and close this guy to get your battery in and out, since your battery's probably not gonna fit in through sliding it through here. We'll see once we get these side rails on. We'll look and see, but these definitely are going to be sitting much lower now, which is nice. Also, our side rails here, these things are quality, guys. They feel super light, and I think they're going to really help getting us some lower center of gravity. And yeah, just lighten stuff up, get the battery lower. All that stuff's going to be a ton, and getting super quality. A little bit of flex, but nothing crazy. I'm excited. All right, so I just wanted to show these chassis rails here. Just be aware that the threading is super tight on these guys. It's not actually threaded, so you kind of create your own threads when you screw it in. So you're gonna have to hold this down pretty snug and give it some pressure as you screw it in, which is nice though, because it means that you're creating perfect threads for it and you're not gonna strip it out, or they're not gonna be too loose or anything like that. So you know the threads are good as you make them. Another thing is your stock upper here has a little nub on it, and typically that little nub is gonna drop down into this hole here on these chassis rails, but the Vast RC chassis rails are designed kind of to use, where'd it go? This guy here, and you put a screw in through here and here, so you screw it down. So if you're going to use the stock here, you're going to have to trim off that nub or drill a little bit bigger hole for that nub to kind of key down into. Now, we're leaving it for now because we're going to replace all of this stuff up here, but I just wanted to point that out just in case you ended up wanting to buy the chassis rails and keep this stock. Also, just so you're aware, this upper deck, I mean, we get 3 millimeters lower, which is freaking awesome. But there is a little bit of a gap here on the stock transmission housing. And that's because on the Vast RCX transmission housing, it's a little bit more beefy right there. It's beefed up and it takes up more of that gap right there. So just be aware that that's why that's there. If you were questioning, it's for their specific transmission housing. All right. We also, you can use the tray if you really wanted to. If you don't use a tray, you're gonna have to figure out something, maybe some foam or something, because this guy is quite loose in there, just kind of slides around. So maybe a little bit of foam underneath the top deck here, just to hold down on the battery, or you can try to use the tray. If you do try to use the tray, it will still fit. It's just you're gonna have a lot of pressure and stress on the deck here. So if I go ahead and throw this in, you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so there we go. We've got our battery tray kind of locked in, and you can see you have to kind of hold this down, and it's got pressure. It means you're going to have pressure on here. I assume the intent is to run it without the tray and give yourself some foam or something to help hold that battery in there. It'd be nice if they had a battery mount of some kind that made sense, or just even like a rubber band mount that you can go from side to side, kind of built into these side rails. That would have been super nice. You could always go ahead and thread a screw in if you really wanted to, and then use a rubber band across there to kind of hold the battery in place, because again, without it, it slides around quite a bit, and with the battery mount, quite a bit of pressure on there. Plus, the whole point is to lower the center of gravity, so ideally, we would just completely remove this battery mount, saving ourselves all this. It's a lot. It's a lot of height there, and just have our battery nice and snug and low, and yeah. Again, my only concern is just how loose this guy kind of is in there without any sort of foam mounted to the top of the tray or a rubber band. Like I said, having some screws on the sides here would be super nice. Just so I could rubber band across there. You know, you might even be able to, if you really want to get creative, trim these corners out of this tray. Maybe I'll do that. We'll trim these corners out, and you'll basically just screw in, maybe trim out, try to keep these connected and these connected, and just have 2 screws and 2 screws, and then take out this whole center piece to drop it lower. That might be worth doing. Maybe we'll look at that. Something like this. We just dremeled it down. We should have kept this. There's a little tab, like this tab here. We should have kept it here. We got excited and just started snipping away. And I should have kept that tab to help hold the battery in a little bit better. Whoops. That's okay though. You can see we still got our screw mounts, and hopefully this will hold the battery in decently. We'll see. Let's get it in the chassis here. And yeah, it should sit right in there just like stock, but now it can sit all the way flat on the chassis itself versus sitting up in, 3 millimeters worth of plastic. Yeah, look at that. So now we got a little bit of tab there. Again, I should have kept that one so we had the tab there, but it's okay. Should hold fine. We even still got our little arm here. And let's see. Battery, typically we go like so. Let's go ahead and drop it in. Drop it in either side. Boom. Can even drop this down in there if we want. Our battery's nice and tucked. Maybe we can even tuck our balance cable in there. Yeah, like so. Kind of tuck that up in front. And now the battery is nice and secure and snug. I guess cutting that off wasn't a bad idea because now our lead can fit through there. So that's good. And yeah, sits nice and snug now. It's not coming out. Let's see, let's put our thumb screws in and we'll see. Hell yeah, it's not going anywhere. That's super snug. I mean, it's not coming out anywhere. And if you really wanted to, you could probably take this off. You don't have to have this side. I think it's more about having just a little bit of reinforcement and keeping it nice and snug this way so it doesn't kind of wobble around in there. But yeah, that works great. Perfect. Especially with our balance lead in there. Now it does mean every time we want to charge it, we have to pull our balance lead out, which that's kind of a pain in the butt. Let's see if we just loosen this a little bit. It'd be nice to find a way to have it so that we could tuck the balance lead away. We used to just tuck it between here, but now because this top plate's a little wider, we can't just tuck it between this little rail thing here. Maybe we can. Let's pull it out and we'll see. All right, so balance lead is out of there, and it is a little loose and floppy in there still, so it might still be worth some foam, and maybe at this point we could have left that little tab on there. That way we could tuck this in behind that tab. Either way, we've got this guy, we've got our balance lead. We could just kind of put our balance lead down in here like that, and then tuck this over on top, maybe. Get it to snip in there, clip in there. You can kind of see, that's not working so well. I don't know. What do you guys think? It would be nice if somebody came up with a nice battery mount that was super low center of gravity for these guys. I think just some foam on top of this is going to be good, but I definitely like using these for the front to back, right? To help kind of limit that movement. And then we can still just tuck this down in there and tuck our lead right here. If we used rubber bands, we could have all of our cable management over the rubber band, which is super nice. And then you just pull this out and charge, and our rubber band still holds it in. So maybe even still go with rubber band mounts here on these side rails. Could be cool. Anyway, all right, let's go ahead and move on. Yeah, we should have kept that tab there. Dang it. Oh, well, not a big deal. The nice thing about this tray, though, is if you're going to run brushless and you have an ESC and receiver separated, the ESC and receiver are generally, significant weight, especially the ESC. Now they sit 3 millimeters lower as well. So that's super convenient. Definitely better than the stock upper deck for sure. Regardless of how we're mounting this battery or getting this battery to be nice and snug in there. It's actually not too bad. Again, if I would have left that tab out over here and maybe just notched out, kind of like right here, just kind of notched a little bit. That way the wires could come over. I think it would have held real nice because it would have been out to about right there. And that would have been totally fine, exactly how it is now. Our little arm dropped down in there. Would have been perfect. Oh well, no biggie. All right, let's go ahead and get the rest of the car done.
A few moments later.
All right, we're on to the front here. I just wanted to give some tips real quick. Make sure that this is 100% loose in here. You're going to have to reuse your stock screws. It does not come with these shouldered screws, so you make sure you've got some of those if you're building from scratch or anything like that. You definitely have to have, there's some hardware you're going to need from a donor car to be able to, build a bottom-up car. But most of this is going to be, like I said, most people are going to be just upgrading, and that's why we're doing an upgrade video right now. But make sure this is nice and loose. Do not over-tighten your shoulder screws, just like on the stock stuff. If you over-tighten these shoulder screws, your car's not going to recenter well, and you want this to be nice and loose. You want to make sure that these pins aren't tight on these, and everything just kind of moves nice and freely. Okay. If you do, for some reason, feel like something's a little tighter than it should be, which we're good here, you can always go through and just run a drill bit, not like on a drill, just by hand, just put a drill bit through and just kind of push it through and pull it back out. Don't take out too much material if you do that, because you'll get slop in there, and you don't want a bunch of slop in there. You want it nice and tight, and even if it is a little snug, this should loosen up as long as it's not too tight. If it's real tight, you'll need to run a drill bit or something through. But again, you shouldn't have to. These were totally fine. This side was a little more snug than this side for some reason, just in that hole. But once I put it down in there, I think it was also on this little shoulder right here, that tiny little shoulder bit right there. But once this sat on there and I kind of ran it back and forth, get it nice and tight on there, and run it back and forth, and totally loosened up, and we're good now. So again, just make sure that's tight, or your car's going to not center and it's going to act funny. Super important. Moving on. And I do just want to remind you, do not over tighten this stuff. All these screws, you're going into plastic, essentially nylon, and just get it snug. Like 2 fingers, right? Like just until it's flush. Once you're flush, you're good. Basically, once you see the gap close, you're good. You don't have to go any further. You don't have to worry about the screws backing out because you're going into plastic, and you're better off to just not over tighten. If you over tighten, then you could strip and then it will back out. So just make sure you don't overdo that at all. Also make sure everything's nice and free. These could be a little more free. I usually like that they just drop down naturally. But again, with the way these are designed to have that zero tolerance, and they have kind of that lubricity, and yes, that's a word, lubricity, between the plastics, it's just going to get nice and smooth over time for sure. I mean, it feels really good. They don't drop free, but I think it's okay. I'm not really worried about binding or anything crazy like that because they're so smooth. And again, if you're overly worried about it, you can literally just take a tiny bit of sandpaper to each spot. I wouldn't overdo it though. And personally, I just wouldn't do it at all. I would just kind of see where you're at after a couple runs. And if it's, pop your shocks off, and if it still feels like it's not loosened up, then maybe consider it. But even then, these are probably going to be totally fine because it's like no play, no slop. Everything feels good. Our servo is moving nice and free in there. Everything's stable. We do still have to screw these down, to be fair, but yeah, should be good. All right, a couple things when doing this front end. Obviously, again, make sure everything's as loose as possible. You don't want play and slop, but you want it to be very loose, right? And if you need to, you can always back this out just a quarter of a turn, maybe snug it down. Feels a little tight, back it off a quarter of a turn, and then you should be good. And then same with these kingpins here. These are a little bit tighter than that caster block, but not a big deal. I'm not worried about it. Also, make sure you put your axle shaft in before you put on your caster block, just because there's not a hole in it. Whereas the stock ones kind of have this little hole to put your axle shaft through. These are beefed up and do not have that hole, so you have to put in to your knuckle first. But look, speaking of beefiness, look at this. This is the stock, and this is the aftermarket or upgrade. These are opposites, but look at that. That's the Vast RCX. This is the stock. Way beefier. So you're definitely getting a ton more durability there. And you've still got all the same clearances. And then here's the, like I said, the caster block. Okay, big difference. And like I said, there's even beefier version of this if you really want to get crazy with it and really beef it up. Pretty awesome, guys. Pretty awesome. All right, let's get that other side on, and we should be good. Throw our shock on here real quick. Just make sure everything seems, yeah. This material feels really good, guys. So I'm super excited to get this on the track and just see how it performs. Getting ourselves a little bit lower here by like 1 millimeter, lightened, stronger. Seems good. They do need to offer some adjustable link ends. Maybe they figured just use the Losis or the aftermarkets. But yeah, like to see, want to be able to build a full Vast RCX kit, like full thing. That would be awesome. So we'll need some link ends. Obviously, maybe shocks. They probably won't end up doing shocks, but if they do, that would be cool as well. Oh, it feels good, guys. So good. All right, let's go ahead and get our links for our steering in there too. Looking good. Super smooth feeling. Again, there's like no play other than in the link ends. So all of the little ball joint link ends from the stock stuff, that's where you'll see most of the play. So you watch this little ball joint. Look at that. There's play, but that's in the ball joint itself with the stock links. All the rest of the stuff, all this, all of the knuckle, it's all solid. Like no play at all. Maybe a little play in the bearing, but that's just the actual bearing itself. And then again, you can see the ball joint play. Just a little bit of play in that ball joint. And again, a little bit is okay. You just don't want too much slop. And one of the Micro Bs are kind of plagued with a lot of slop in the steering right here. So that's kind of normal. And again, this is all link ends doing that. All this in and out and the side to side. Even on the steering rack, most of that play, it's in the links itself. The drag link to the servo, the steering rods here. But much better than stock, that's for sure. And it feels buttery smooth. Don't forget, these are made for racers. So, you know, they'd rather them be tighter tolerances that you could always loosen up if you needed to. But you shouldn't have to. Like I said, it feels really good. And I love that it's got extra shock adjustments compared to the stock, which only had the 2 there. So we've got 4 here, and then we've also got 3 up here on the shock tower compared to the 2 that stock had. So definitely awesome that we're so adjustable. Also make sure your wheels are also free flow in there. Tighten them down, crank them until they, don't over crank them, but crank them until you feel a little bit of binding and then back them off just a little. You don't want to see too much play in the actual bearings because it's too loose. Also, we've taken our hexes before, and you know there's like a little nub on the hexes. I'll show you on this guy because it's easy to see. This little edge here, and we'll sand it down on some sandpaper nice and flat just to get rid of some of that edge. That way you can get it a little tighter up against the actual axle shaft pin on the hex. The hex and the axle shaft pin can actually meet up and seat versus having that little ridge press into your bearings and cause it to go slow. So yeah. Stock bearings. Well, actually, these are the bearings that came on the Vast stuff, so seems good. All right, let's work on the back here.
More moments later.
All right, working on the rear end here. I did take and sand these down just a little bit. On this side, for some reason, it seemed to be a little tight and it wasn't freely dropping. You want these to freely drop. Again, just a little bit of sandpaper, either on the rear bumper or on the A-arm itself. I did a little bit on both, and I test fit. Got a little looser, did a little bit more, got a little looser, test fit. Just kept doing that. You don't just want to take a bunch off and then it ends up being sloppy. You want it to stay nice and tight as possible. And again, also make sure you're testing it with the screws tightened down, because as you tighten this down, you know, things kind of will snug up, and that can also, you won't notice how tight it is until you actually fully tighten it down. Same goes on this. This guy is a little tight. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and just tighten it down a little more, get it nice and snug, not over tighten because you don't want to strip it, but you can see it's super tight now. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of work it while it's pretty tight here. Just give it a couple back and forths, and then we can back this screw out a little bit more, maybe a half turn. See how we're doing? Yeah, maybe another half turn, so a full turn. And now we're nice and free. You can snug it up if it feels a little too loose, but there you go. Look at that, with very minimal play in there. See that? And again, the nice thing is you can snug it just a little more, quarter turn, and now it's snugged up just barely to where it won't free fall, but you want it to free fall. So maybe go back a tenth of a turn and just kind of fine tune that until it's exactly where you want it to be. And I didn't do any sanding on this side, but you may have to. So again, it's not a problem. It's not a defect. It's actually in the design that these should be really nice and snug. And then you can go through and, like I said, sand things down or file it down just barely until it feels nice and snug. Or do like I did here with this side and kind of tighten it down and just kind of try to wear it in a little bit and then back it out. Either way, should look like that. Everything should fall nice and free. Okay, with no play in it. See that? The tiniest little click. It's actually right there on the kingpin itself, but, or I guess that's technically not a kingpin. A-arm pin. Hinge pin. Anyway, all right, let's finish this. And again, just to compare, here's the stock. And there's the Vast RCX, much beefier. Okay. Look at that from the bottom. And look at that. You can see how much beefier it is in there. Pretty awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and do the rear shock tower, and this actually has an integrated wing mount here, which is pretty awesome. So the wing mount actually attaches to the transmission on this guy, versus this is all one piece on the stock Losi. You can see it's all kind of one piece there. This guy has the wing mount as the 4 mounting points onto the transmission housing, and then your shock tower mounts to the wing mount with these 2 screws. One nice thing about this shock mount is there are multiple upper link positions, so not just multiple shock positions where we've only got 2 on this guy, we've got 3 here. We also have 2 of the upper link mounts, where as on the stock we only have 1, so you can raise that to get more tunability out of your car, which is very awesome as well. It's also a little bit beefier, so should hold up pretty well. Let's get it installed. And there it is, nice and free, not a lot of play. I mean, really very minimal. You just kind of, you feel it, you feel the clicks. And you can kind of see, but again, way better than stock. And nice and free and smooth. Feels great. Let's get our shocks on. Actually, we got to get our ball joints in. Wait a second. Does it not come with lower ball joints? Boo! Those are the only ball joints we have to reuse. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Doesn't come with ball joints there, so we have to reuse these. I was hoping it would replace everything that we had, would replace all of the ball joints. Maybe they need to include one more set with this upper kit, since it's one of the more expensive parts. Having one more set of these would be nice. So you've got your uppers, your lowers, and then the ones for your A-arms. Otherwise, we have to use these. That's unfortunate. So a final little thing before we get this guy all wrapped up, you definitely want to make sure that this screw is not rubbing on the inside of your wheel. You can see on here, as we were spinning it around, it was rubbing a little bit because we had to back it out just a little to get that freedom of movement in there. So just make sure that, you know, you're screwing it in deep enough to where you're not interfering with your wheel, but not so deep that it's causing binding and whatnot. And if you find that you need to have it looser, or you can always Dremel down or sand down in here to kind of loosen it up in there. Or if you would rather do it on the A-arm, which is what we ended up doing here because it's nice and loose, we just have to get the screw deeper in. So I went ahead and I just took down, you can see just a little bit on that A-arm. I took it down so that the screw could sit deeper in and not rub on our wheel here. That way we're nice and loose. And you can see it's not completely loose. It's still a little bit, so I could back it out just a tiny, tiny bit here. But again, if you start to back it out too far, then you're going to rub on your wheel. So it's a balance. It's a balance between maybe sand just a tiny bit off on each side of this, and then sand a little bit on the outside to make sure you get all the way in and you're not rubbing. But we definitely had a little bit of rub issue there. Not a big deal. And then also just be aware of this too. Make sure, just in case if you're running wheels that aren't totally round, maybe you got it's a little wonky because you banged on a wall or something, or using aftermarket wheels, the other rub point would be right here. So if you have to take some off of this right here, just a little bit, sand it down so that you're not rubbing, don't be scared to do that. It's not a big deal to have to take off some of that just to make a little bit of clearance. Again, I'd rather have more material to make sure things are nice and snug and beefy where they need to be. And if I need to take some off to make it work, that's totally fine. Again, they're designed that way. So, all right, we should be good. I'm gonna check this side. I think we're good on this side. Oh, maybe. Feels like a little tiny bit of, I can kind of see a line in there. So we might have to take off just a little bit. And you can see that the wheel is not perfectly round too. So it's rubbing more in one spot right there. See that little bit right there? You can see that line. There's another one there. So part of it's that the wheel's not perfectly round and it's just, 1/10 of a millimeter. So we'll take off a little bit more there too. All right, one last tip. You can see here when I turn this axle spins opposite direction. Our diff is nice and clear and free. Our bearings are nice and free. They're not bound up. They're not crooked inside the the hubs, everything moves super easily, super freely. And now when you put your wheels on, you can test and make sure you're not over tightening your wheel onto your hex hub, and then your hex is compressing onto your bearing. If it is, again, you can take off those little nibs on the back of your hex, or you just need to loosen your wheel in general. So I'm just setting this one on, and you can see here, oh, something's happening. It's getting caught somewhere. See that? So we're still hitting somewhere, probably this screw, just a little bit, or maybe even up here. It's hard to tell, but you can see that it was moving, and I'm not even tightening it down. I'm just setting it on there. But you can see when I move it, something, because the wheel's not totally round, and it's flat, it's flush. But you can see it's hitting. Okay, so we just need to kind of figure out where it's hitting and make a little bit of clearance. Again, we might need it here. I can actually test this. We're gonna bind up our suspension here, but we'll be able to see, is it this screw? I'll tighten this screw down a little bit more. Again, don't want to over tighten and strip it out, but give it a little bit of space. There we go. Now it looks like we're good. We're not hitting. So that's what it is. It's that screw is still kind of touching just a little bit. But this is a good way to check. You want to do this before you put it all together. Test each part as you go. Make sure everything is nice and free. Every ball joint, start here, here. Check these. Check your bearings. Check every piece, your hinge pins here as you go. That way, when you get it all together and it's just something's acting weird and funny, you're like, what's going on? Why is it binding like this? You know, you don't know if it's this link. You don't know if it's this. You don't know if it's this. So doing one thing at a time and making sure they're loose is super important. Okay, but let's see. It should be free though. Yeah. All right. So we need to make a little bit more clearance for this screw. We're probably we've taken off quite a bit there. You can see it actually dips down. This side we didn't have to do so much, but we did take it down a little bit. But you can see we dipped it down a little. We're going to go ahead and take out some material on this actual hub, just so that I can keep this tighter and not have to take out more material out of the arm there. And there we go. Nice and free on both sides. Neither side is binding in any way. We have our nuts on. We're nice and tight. There's no play. Everything's nice and free and smooth. That's how you make sure things are running right. So that's awesome. All right, so we're all done. Got our electronics all in there. I went ahead and just direct wired the servo, soldered it directly to it. Same with this transponder. That way we lose a lot of this weight here. It's a good chunk of just wiring mess that we don't really need. Obviously we decased it, double-sided sticky tape it, even shortened our motor wire here a little bit, and we should be good to go. The battery actually seems to be fitting pretty well in there. There's just a tiny bit of movement, but once it's plugged in and the body's on there, it doesn't go anywhere. We removed our diff cover, or spur gear cover, because we pulled the motor obviously to solder that. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that off because, well, when you're racing, especially on carpet, we race on RCP track, so it's fairly clean, but you do, even with the cover on there, you want to have access to this just to make sure you got good mesh and stuff like that. The wing, fantastic, nothing to complain about there. I think it's awesome looking. It's super lightweight. I do wish it came with a little bit smaller screws. These screws are super long and poke all the way out the back, so I don't really like that. Not the biggest fan of that, but that's okay. But they could have included shorter screws there. I can always swap them out. Not a big deal. Let's go ahead and weigh this guy. I'm going to weigh it the same way we weighed the first time, basically with everything. So that includes body clips. And I'm going to throw the wire. Well, we'll do two weigh-ins. We'll do one with the wires and one without. Because that does weigh a little extra. So actually here, we'll just do this. Watch. Throw this on here. How much did we save by cutting off all this stuff? 5.2 grams. This guy's heavy. It's got a little ferrite ring, which is supposed to help reduce interference, but we've shortened up the wires. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. If we do find an issue, we can always try to throw the ferrite ring back on there, but I'm not too worried about it. So anyway, 5 grams, 5.2 grams saved there. And then let's see what the truck is now. 58.42. I'll go ahead and put the previous numbers over here so you guys can compare. But now we're at 151 grams, 151.5. So it looks like before we were at 154.3-ish. So we're actually 3 grams lighter now overall. But we did remove 5 grams worth of stuff. So I guess technically the parts kind of added up to be a little bit heavier than stock. But we did lower our center of gravity a ton. And we've also got a little bit extra flare there. Again, this wing is probably a little bit heavier than the stock wing, but our weight distribution overall should still be very similar. Yeah, it's basically the same, 42.58. But again, now it's all lower. Everything is much lower center of gravity, which is a great thing. That's going to be a huge difference on the track, getting it low. You know, having your weight high is just going to cause you to roll more. It's going to make your car handle not as well. Getting all the weight as low as possible is super important. So we definitely achieved that. And again, we got more tunability now. We have more durability. We even lowered the car itself, the actual chassis we lowered with these gull wing style A-arms up here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I think this is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to really help improve the drive quality, the handling, and again, just some great replacement parts and upgrade parts depending on what you're picking up. So yeah, let's go run this guy. I'm excited.
Micro B, Vast RCX, tiny frame, giant threat. 128 beast, cutting through the pack, tiny rage, never looking back, grip in the corners, blast down the straight, RCX designs, we dominate. Micro B, Vast RCX, tiny beast, that's me, we ruling the scene. Micro B, Vast RCX. High chance, always on fire. Servo lock tight, tires lift higher. Grip to the head, this weapon don't play. Dominate the class, yeah, we do it all day. Micro B, that's RCX. Tiny beast, that's me. We ruling the scene.
Well, there we go, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed the running video, as well as showing all of the Vast RCX parts. They have some great parts. Full disclosure, we did end up breaking a knuckle and caster block. We banged it into a wall real hard, and we run on the foam RCP tracks, which means there's foam walls. So it's not the first time I've broken a knuckle or a C-hub. I've broken many of the stock ones, so it wasn't really unexpected. It did seem pretty durable up until that point. I banged the walls really hard a couple times throughout the very first race I did, because we kind of changed things and I was kind of messing with stuff, and so kind of was being sloppy and having fun with it, and we weren't recording any running video or anything, so I was just kind of, again, pushing it. And at the end of the race, I hit the wall a couple times, but at the very end of the race, I was doing a lap, and I just like full gunned it, trying to make one of the sharp corners, and missed, and just nailed the inside of the corner. And it ended up breaking the caster block and the knuckle at the same time. And I think they were already probably cracked or broken from multiple hits on that side. But it seems like it's going to be fine overall. We ran it more after that, after replacing those parts, and banged it up even, just as much over a couple more races. The next week, we actually took it and raced it again, and didn't break anything. So I think we're good. I think it's going to be some awesome parts. And again, if you really are worried about it, on the caster blocks, you can get the heavier duty ones. These are the lightweight ones, and these are meant for racing, right? You're supposed to not hit walls, and we are good at hitting walls. So yeah, either way, I love the Buggy. I love the upgrades. I love how the material feels and looks. I love the price point. Overall, I think it's some good stuff, and I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff coming from this company. So as we get more stuff or new stuff comes out, we'll definitely try to show it to you guys when we can. They're, like I said, doing the Micro B. I think they have some, Micro B and Micro T. They're going to have some Mini B and Mini T stuff coming, as well as the 128 scale team associated RC28. There's going to be some parts for that. I think they have some Grom parts coming. Again, a whole bunch of stuff. And then again, the crawler stuff. So we're excited to see some of their crawler stuff as well. It's an interesting material for sure. It's not your typical 3D printed stuff. Again, I really don't like 3D printed stuff, and this is more of an industrial grade type setup. And so I dig that. I really love the low center of gravity plate here where we can remove that battery tray. They need to print out some new mounts for us, front and rear battery mount, kind of like the stock ones, just without the actual center portion, just using those two screws on each mount. I think that'd be fine. Again, you can use a stock one like we did, just got to trim it out. Anyway, guys, awesome parts, and we're excited to show you the future of what Vast RCX is going to be bringing to you guys. I want to give a huge shout out to all of our channel members. All these guys and gals get to see videos early before anybody else, and they get a bunch of perks. So you can definitely check out all the perks for all the different channel member levels. The highest level gets stickers sent out every month. So I appreciate everybody for supporting the channel through channel memberships. If you can't do a channel membership, I totally understand. At least hit that subscribe. That's a big deal. It's just a click for you, but it means the world to me. I'm trying to get our subscriber count up. Let's hit that 20,000. Getting there real soon. And yeah, I appreciate everybody who helps support the channel however you choose to do it. Sharing the videos is also a great way to do it, and even just commenting down below. Why don't you put down in the comments below if you made it all the way to the end of this video, just so I know you made it. The Micro B part selection is vast. That's kind of long. Something? Mention Vast. Mention Vast down in the comments below. And yeah, that way we know you made the whole video all the way to the end. And yeah, get out there, build something awesome, guys. Build a car, build a course, build a community. All those things are super important. Speaking of communities, we do have a Discord server. Check it out down in the description below if you want to check out an awesome community. People showing all their builds, whether it's a crawler or a basher or a racer. All the small scale stuff is in there. Even some big scale stuff they talk about and show off their stuff. People just like to talk in there, whether they're asking for help, giving opinions, and showing off. Awesome community. Down in the link, down in the description below, there's a link. So check out the Discord. And yeah, smash it, crash it, and bash it. Don't break the expensive parts. I'm missing something. Oh yeah, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. Peace.
Micro B, Vast RCX, Tiny Frame, Giant Threat, 128 beast, cutting through the pack, tiny rage, never looking back, grip in the corners, blast down the straight, RCX designs we dominate. Micro B, Vast RCX.